Many years ago, in the sun-warmed village of Ekemba, lived a man named Jabari, a well-known trader who sold bright, beautiful African cloths in the town market. He was married to a gentle and graceful woman named Enia, and together they had 2 children, a lively boy and a curious little girl. In their 10 years of marriage, Enia had never worked outside the home, but within it, she was a queen of diligence. She cared for the children, managed the house, cooked meals, cleaned, and tended to Jabari's every need without ever once complaining. Villagers often joked that she was raising 3 children because Jabari, despite being a grown man, had not a single domestic skill. He was the only son of a doting mother who had done everything for him, so much so that as an adult, he couldn't even carry his own plate to the kitchen after eating, let alone wash it. Fortune smiled on him when he married Enia, a woman so dedicated that she treated his helplessness with patience. She served him, tidied up behind him, and always rushed to help whenever he faltered. Even after giving birth, Jabari never lifted a finger to help with feeding or bathing the babies. He simply didn't know how. The only thing he excelled at was selling his fabrics, and in that, he was a master. Jabari knew he was fortunate, and he often thanked the ancestors for blessing him with such a wife. Enia, too, felt lucky. His appreciation fueled her devotion, and her heart bloomed with love. For a long time, she believed their life was just about perfect. At first, Jabari felt the same, but as the years passed, he began to crave more. His work often took him to the bustling city, where he met women who were polished, bold, and adventurous, nothing like the quiet, dutiful Enia. The more time he spent there, the more he longed for something different. Enia, who had once seemed ideal, now appeared too conservative, too predictable. He began bringing unusual ideas into their marriage-suggestive clothes for her to wear, strange behaviors he had picked up from city life, and games that Enia found disturbing. She tried to indulge him at first, to keep him happy, but some of his requests were so far from her world that she ran from the room, unsettled by what she called his new madness. Eventually, Enia began sleeping in the sitting room out of fear of what he might try next. She had no idea that this quiet step would become the beginning of the unraveling. One day, while on a buying trip to replenish his fabric stock, Jabari visited one of his regular suppliers. As he combed through the colorful cloths, he felt a presence behind him. Turning around, he saw a striking young woman, dressed elegantly, watching him with a small smile. "Am I in your way?" he asked. "Not at all," she said warmly. "I was just admiring how confidently you choose your fabrics. You clearly have an eye for quality. I've been struggling to pick the right ones. Would you help me?" Jabari smiled, flattered, and eagerly offered his help. He moved from rack to rack, picking out the finest prints for her, and when she saw them, her face lit up. Just before parting, she handed him a neat card and introduced herself as Zola, a project manager at a prestigious city firm. "Feel free to reach out," she said with a wink. Jabari floated back to Ekemba that day, his spirits higher than they had been in years. He had always admired women like Zola, sharp, independent, city slick, but had never dared approach them, and now one had come to him, without his chasing, without his spending. That evening, he pulled out her card and studied every word, impressed by her status, her polish. He knew in his heart that he needed to see her again. On his next trip to the city, he called her. Zola picked up cheerfully and agreed to meet for lunch. They ate at a fancy restaurant, laughed, shared stories, and learned more about each other. Zola told him she was single, lived alone, and was proud of her achievements. Jabari was captivated. Everything about her spoke of adventure, of a life unlike the one he had at home. He imagined wild weekends, exciting company, conversations that didn't end in domestic chores. But when he thought of Enia and the children, his heart darkened. "They will only hold me back," he thought bitterly. He didn't want to abandon them, at least not yet, But he also didn't want to miss this rare chance to live a life he believed he deserved. And so, he lied. Looking Zola in the eyes, he said quietly, "I'm a widower. My wife passed some years ago. Years ago, my wife passed and left me with our 2 children." Jabari had said softly over lunch, his voice carrying the perfect note of sorrow. "Life has not been easy. I work hard every day to give them what they need. When I travel for business, the housemaid stays with them. They're all I have." Zola listened with wide, sympathetic eyes, moved by what she thought was a single father's devotion. To her, Jabari seemed strong, dependable, the kind of man worth holding on to. And so, from that day on, their friendship deepened into something more. They spoke every day, and each time Jabari came to the city, they shared meals, laughter, and slow walks under neon lights. Soon, friendship turned to desire, and Jabari found himself fully immersed in the life he once only dreamed of. With Zola, he felt free, excited, and worldly. He began to look back at Enya not with affection, but with irritation. The very presence of his wife now grated on him. She seemed too simple, too quiet, too small for the man he believed he had become. Enya noticed the change, his coldness, his distance, the sudden way he recoiled from her touch. She tried to speak to him, to ask what had gone wrong, but Jabari dismissed her like a buzzing fly. He had already made up his mind. Then, one morning, Zola came to Ekemba. They had planned it in secret. He would leave Enya and move to the city to begin a new life with Zola. When she arrived, Jabari was already packed, standing in the compound with his bags by his feet. Enya stepped out in confusion. "Where are you going?" she asked softly. Jabari looked her in the eyes and said, "I'm tired. I'm done pretending this is a marriage." She gasped, heart pounding. "Please don't do this. Think of the children. Think of how we began, how we've built this life together." But Jabari turned his back. She followed him outside and stopped dead when she saw Zola by the car, elegant, confident, and radiant. In that moment, everything clicked. Enya dropped to her knees, clutching her wrapper, tears blurring her vision. "Please, Jabari, please don't leave us," she sobbed. Zola turned to him, confused. "Who is she?" she asked. Jabari, eyes cold, replied, "Don't mind her. She's the housemaid I told you about, the one who helps with the children. I don't know why she's acting like I promised her anything." He laughed bitterly. "She's useful around the house, yes, but marriage? I could never stoop so low." Enya looked up, stunned, as if slapped. "Jabari, how can you say that? I'm your wife." She cried, "We are a family." "Not anymore," he replied, climbing into the car. He reached for the children, but they stepped away, clutching their mother. So Jabari left them behind and rode away with Zola. Enya collapsed into sobs, broken beyond words. She had given everything to him, her body, her strength, her youth, and now he had cast her aside. Like spoiled food. Her children wrapped their arms around her, promising to be her strength, and somehow, that promise became a thin string holding her together. Meanwhile, Jabari arrived at Zola's city apartment glowing with excitement. This was the life luxury. Laughter, no stress. For 2 months, it was as if he had stepped into paradise. They went out often, ate at fine places, and lived as though real life could never touch them. But then, one morning, Zola nudged him awake. "Jabari, get up. Go and make breakfast. It's past 6, I need my morning tea." Jabari sat up grudgingly, trying to make sense of what she had said. "What?" he muttered. "Go to the kitchen," she repeated. "I don't feel like eating out today. Our housekeeper is away for 2 weeks visiting her parents. You'll manage until she's back." Jabari blinked, stunned. "You want me to cook?" "Of course," Zola said casually. "You grew up in the village, didn't you? I'm sure you know all about housework." But Jabari had never entered a kitchen in his life, not as a child, not as a husband, not even to boil water. "Zola," he said nervously, "I don't go to kitchens. I don't even know how to turn anything on in there." She laughed. "Then today you'll commit your first kitchen crime. Go make tea, and while you're at it, real food too. I'm hungry." Before he could protest, she tossed a pillow at him and kicked him out of bed. In a daze, Jabari shuffled toward the kitchen, but when he got there, he froze. The space looked like a strange science lab. Pots, blenders, cookers' machines he had never touched stared back at him. He turned in slow circles, bewildered. His heart thumped. Where was the Milo tin? Where was the kettle Enya always used? He stood there like a clown at a dance he didn't know, until Zola's sharp voice sliced through the air. "Jabari, what's taking you so long? I need my tea." Panic rushed through him. He opened random cabinets, trying to guess what to do next. Jabari shuffled nervously in Zola's sleek kitchen, heart pounding like a festival drum. He had never done this before, never boiled water, never made tea, but he was determined to prove himself. He grabbed a cup and filled it with water from the tap, then opened cupboards until he found a container filled with brown powder. "This must be the chocolate drink," he thought proudly, scooping 2 heaping spoons into the cup. Then he spotted another jar with fine white grains and added 2 more spoons, assuming it was milk. The smell from the mixture was strange and sharp, and it made him cough, but he ignored it. Maybe rich people's tea smells different, he reasoned. With full confidence, he marched to the bedroom, where Zola lay in bed scrolling through her phone. She accepted the cup without suspicion, raised it to her lips, and the moment the thick liquid touched her tongue, she leapt up with a scream that shook the walls. "Ah!" she shrieked, spitting the drink and flinging the cup across the room. "What is this madness?" She dashed to the bathroom like a woman possessed, slamming the door behind her and staying under the tap for half an hour. When she finally emerged, her lips were swollen, her eyes red, and her face twisted in horror. Jabari watched her, stunned. "Are you okay?" he asked, inching toward her like a child afraid of punishment. She stared at him like he was a demon. "Sent to torment her. So you came here to kill me? For what?" "I only asked for tea." Jabari looked truly confused. "But I made it exactly how I've seen my wife do it," he stammered. "It smelled strong, but I thought, show me what you used," she demanded. In the kitchen, he proudly pointed out the 2 containers. One had fine white grain salt, and the other, the brown powder ground black pepper. Zola's eyes widened. "You used salt and pepper to make tea?" She nearly fainted. "Did you even taste it first?" "No," he admitted sheepishly. "Good," she snapped. "You will now." She took a spoon, scooped a heaping pile of salt, and shoved it into his mouth before he could escape. Jabari gagged, spat it out, and ran to rinse his burning tongue. But she wasn't done. She grabbed a spoon of black pepper, and before he could protest, dumped it into his mouth. That's when Jabari truly lost it. He jumped, howled, and dashed around the kitchen like a man on fire. Zola, unable to hold back, burst into laughter so loud it echoed down the hallway. "You tried to poison me," she howled. "Now you'll eat the same soup you cooked." The rest of the day passed in silence. Jabari fasted unintentionally, while Zola ordered herself food and warned him never to enter her kitchen again. He was relieved. He didn't want to embarrass his ancestors another time. But from that day on, his real suffering began. Zola, a wealthy woman who had always longed for a man she could command, had found the perfect subject. Jabari, once pampered by a loving wife, was now a servant. It started with small chores, washing plates, cleaning the table, but quickly turned into full-blown servitude. Zola sent her housemaid away permanently, saying she no longer needed help. Jabari would rise by 6 a.m. to a long list of tasks. If he didn't finish them, he wouldn't eat. He scrubbed bathrooms, washed her undergarments, massaged her feet. and arranged her shoes in perfect order. He was no longer her lover, he was her errand boy, her cleaner, her slave. He felt trapped. He thought of Enya, of the soft life he had once rejected, where he was cherished and respected, and now, here he was, reduced to a house pet in a home he once thought was paradise. But he couldn't leave. Pride caged him. How could he go? Back to Ekemba, to the same wife he had insulted and abandoned? How could he face the neighbors after leaving in luxury, only to return in disgrace? No, he chose to endure. What Jabari didn't know was that Zola was part of a secret circle of elite city women who thrived on control. They lured in village men simple, loyal, and unaware, and turned them into obedient tools. These women often met in private lounges, sipping wine and swapping stories about how they trained their men like pets. And Jabari? He had just become Zola's latest tale. Zola was proud when she brought Jabari into her life. He was her trophy, proof to her friends that she too had secured her puppy. At every gathering, these wealthy city women paraded their subdued men like accessories, men who followed quietly behind, holding handbags, fetching drinks, and bowing their heads like servants. Jabari saw other men like himself, once proud and free, now husks of who they were, jobless, dependent, and grateful just to have a roof over their heads. He stayed with Zola for a year, and in that time, he saw suffering dressed in gold. She had turned him into a full domestic machine. Jabari now cooked, cleaned, scrubbed toilets, and even learned to make elaborate meals, all things he never imagined doing in his life. But every task chipped away at him. At night, he would lie awake thinking of Enya, his former wife, the woman who never let him lift a finger, who respected him, cared for him, and never shamed him. Enya had been gentle, warm, and kind, a rare jewel. He began to wonder, could she still love me? Could she be praying for my return? Would she forgive me if I asked? His heart said yes. And so, swallowing what little pride he had left, Jabari began planning his escape. He waited for the perfect day, then slipped away without a word. But when he reached his old house in Ekemba, he found it empty. Panic rising, he asked around and learned that Enya had moved out months ago. Someone finally gave him her new address, and he rushed there in desperation. When the door opened, it was Enya, but she didn't welcome him in. She stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Jabari, looking thin and worn, offered a weak smile. Enya, how are you? How are the children? I came looking for you. Her face remained cold. Looking for me? Am I in danger? She asked flatly. Jabari tried to chuckle but only sighed. I need to talk to you. Please, can I come inside? No, she said. If you have something to say, say it here. He took a deep breath. I don't even know where to begin. Enya, I'm ashamed. I made a terrible mistake. I think she used charms because I don't understand what came over me. I left everything behind for her, but it was never worth it. I came to apologize and to ask if we can start over. Enya stared at him, then gave a small laugh filled with disbelief. You and who will start over? She asked. Don't waste your breath. Before you came, I had already made up my mind. The truth is, when you left, I felt relieved. You were a burden, Jabari. Aside from money, when you felt like giving it, what did you ever contribute? I'm done cleaning up. After you. Jabari stepped forward, pleading, but I've changed. I can cook, clean, do laundry. I'm no longer that lazy man. Enya raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? I guess your sweet little city queen gave you a good training. She folded her arms. Well, it doesn't matter. We've moved on. We are not chairs that you can return to after leaving. This house is mine. Don't come back here again. Her voice hardened. You called me a maid. You humiliated me. You abandoned us. Over a year has passed. It's over. With that, she turned and slammed the door. Jabari stood frozen on the porch, heartbroken and mind-spinning. He had thought he could return and be welcomed, but now everything he once had was gone. He wandered the streets of Ekemba, aimless and shattered. He was a fool. He had traded gold for garbage, only to find the trash rotting and the gold long gone. His business had crumbled too. He had sold everything to impress Zola. Now he had nothing, no family, no home, no purpose. That night, after hours of weeping and thinking in the dark, Jabari made a decision. He would leave this life behind completely. There was nothing left to salvage. The next morning, he walked out of the village and sought out a monastery on the edge of the forested hills. He knocked on the old wooden gate and asked to be admitted. He would become a monk. He would pray. He would live quietly. He would carry his guilt like a cloak, and maybe, in that stillness, he could find peace. When Enya later heard whispers of Jabari's retreat into the monastery, she felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no longing. Her heart had already buried him. And deep down, she believed he had finally made the right choice.